If I had $1 for every single time a parent had asked me for advice about how they can help their kids not take life-threatening risks, I'd be a very rich man. But I think this is one of the most important components of great parenting, not just for parents, but for grandparents and adult carers. What does the research say we can do to reduce the likelihood of our young people, particularly teenagers, from taking life-threatening risks? Well, there are a couple of things. The first is you need to be the world expert on your son and daughter. That is, you need to know their personality and their temperament. Not all young people are the same. We know that they've got 23 chromosomes from you and 23 chromosomes from the person you married. And what we have to do is we have to recognize which of those are dominant and which are recessive. So do you have a sensation seeker at home? Do you have a kid who has a track record of making good decisions and keeping themselves safe? Do they hang out with kids like that? And most importantly, are they the sort of child who you think would be more likely to be risk averse, or are they ones that are going to take unhealthy risks? You need to parent according to the answers to those questions. The second thing we have to do with young people is we know that a unique characteristic of young people is an inability to predict the consequences of their actions. And that's because their brain isn't through growing yet. So you have to learn to monitor your son and daughter and their activities. You've got to know where they are, who they're with, and what they're doing. And if you make that an expectation, that will help significantly prevent some risk-taking behaviour, because there's an expectation that you've set up that your kids will let you know where they are. The third thing really relates to communication. What the research is telling us is that the stronger the connection between the adults and the young person, the greater the likelihood it is that you will reduce the chances of them making poor choices and taking risky behaviour. So you must do everything in your power to keep the lines of communication open. So don't argue over things that don't matter. No one's ever died of an untidy room. Keep your conversations to issues that relate to their health and safety. You also need to be aware that at no other time in their lives is the desire to be with their friends so strong, and friends can have a very significant influence on young people. The research says that sensible young people generally will become very unsensible when they're surrounded by friends who are encouraging them to do stupid things. So what we have to do is go out of our way right from the start to encourage a prosocial network of friends. What does that mean? It means a bunch of friends who have track records of making good decisions, of keeping themselves safe, and who aren't necessarily outrageous sensation seekers. So you can do that by inviting those types of kids into your home, by going on holiday with those types of kids, and by hanging out with those types of families. Do you make explicit what your attitudes and values are? Because you can do that by talking with the young people way before they're in a situation where they've got to make a choice, because you've actually taught them through your actions and through your conversations what you think is wrong. This is essentially about giving your children a moral compass, allowing them to know your attitudes and values from the earliest age on greatly increase the chance that they will absorb these and they will become their default position when they're away from you and they have to make these decisions. But you never want them growing up not knowing what you believed and what your values were. Another very, very important technique is to use teachable moments from the media. Every single time the media report a train surfing death, a terrible car accident involving young people, or a drug overdose in your area, use this as an example. Sit them down, don't lecture them, don't wag your finger, but ask them what they think about it. Find out what they know about the issue and then explore together what you think they should know. And if you don't know, go to websites. Very simple. But use those teachable moments from the media. The other thing is that young people are very, very influenced by what the adults in their environment do. Do you and your partner model the very responsible behaviour that you expect from them in your own life? Because if you do, that's a very powerful piece of role modelling. If, on the other hand, you solve your problems with alcohol or you behave in ways that you wouldn't want them to, then they get a very mixed message. Do you and your partner discuss with them how to assess risk? This is where we have the power of the narrative, telling them stories. From an early age, you can talk to them about how you assess risk in your life, and that gives them a very clear example to follow, because very, very, very many of these young people will be in situations where they have to make a decision, and you need to make sure that they're prepared to weigh up the pros and the cons of any one situation. Have you and your partner established clear, consistent ground rules around risk-taking behaviours with your sons and daughters? One of the principles of good adolescent psychology is that you set the rules, you set the boundaries, and then you make sure that they understand them, and if they go over them, you then have to put a consequence in place. And the consequence has to be proximate to the event, and it has to be reasonably painful. Usually withdrawal of electrical activity, particularly computers, phones, works a treat. Have you established a bailout system? We know that young people will often find themselves in situations that they don't want to be in. So a really good way of reducing the risk of harm is to give them a secret code word. It might be just the word Omega, which they text to you, and that's the code word for you to come and get them. Hopefully you know where they are, and then they can say to their friends, oh, my parents have come to pick me up, not knowing, of course, that they called you. But that's a very, very good technique. The other thing is you need to teach them refusal skills before the event. Unfortunately, you can't monitor your kids 24 hours a day. So occasionally they're going to be in a situation which they don't want to be in. But you have to teach them how to talk themselves out of risky situations that they don't want to engage in. Very quick technique that I've taught my kids. If you were ever offered marijuana, you just pull down your lower lip and you explain to the people that, no, you can't smoke anything at the moment because you've got these weeping infected boils at the moment and you wouldn't want to share that disease with anyone else. Works a treat, trust me. The last thing is you need to channel your kids' risk-taking tendencies into activities which are adrenaline charged, but they're safe, at least safer. So if you've got a sensation-seeking kid, you need to encourage them into martial arts, into rock climbing, into canoeing or mountain biking. But you need to give that energy an outlet. And this again is about you being the world expert on your kid.